Hi, we're going to start today's mindful flow with weights with a warm-up, so we won't be using weights right away. So let's start on our hands and knees, and we are going to at all times maintain a neutral spine. So we're just going to come forward and back, basically warming up our hip hinge here in this position, supported by our hands and knees. So I'm maintaining a neutral spine. I'm not letting my ribs come flying out of my body, and I'm not tucking my tail. So I am maintaining that feeling that all the natural curves of my body are remaining in place. And then I'm going to do one of my rather new ideas that I learned from Catherine Bruni-Young, and that is walking all over your hands in various ways to kind of warm them up and get them ready for loads that could be applied to the inside of the hand, the outside of the hand, maybe the back of the hand pointed towards me, always being careful with what I do. I don't want to cause myself any harm. It's much easier to apply load closer to your knees than far away from your knees. Good. And then we're just going to do one more little warm-up where we're going to walk out into a low plank, put our knees down, and walk ourselves back up. And then we'll come on out to a low plank, always maintaining that hip hinge and coming up, hip hinging down, maintaining that neutral spine. Notice I'm trying different ways with my hands, just different ways of applying load to my hands, so I can get used to all of those things. Let's come up to stand, and we're going to do it by bringing one leg forward and coming up through a lunge. And that just allows us to come up with a hip hinge again. So let's try a good morning for osteoporosis or osteopenia. So notice that as we do this good morning, we're coming forward in a hip hinge. I'm only going so far because right now, without being totally warmed up, that's what I've got in my hamstrings. So I come down, I lift up, I come back, and I come all the way up again. So that is my good morning for osteopenia and osteoporosis. And then we'll come up again, and I'm going to face you. We're going to interlace our hands and just take a little, very small stretch so my left arm is reaching. I'm pressing through my left foot. I'm keeping my ribs somewhat in my body. I noticed I was flaring a little bit. And then I'm going to change the grip on my inside out hands and go the other way. It's just a moment to feel settled, pressing through my right heel. Good. And now we'll come back to the back of our mat. I'm going to do my modified beginning to the sun salutation, and then I'm going to go this way to walk out to my plank. I'm going to come down to my knees, come down to the floor, push back up, and find my way into downward dog. And let's make sure it's a nice short downward dog where you can really keep your spine in neutral, have fairly bent knees if you need them, or more straight. And we're just going to drop our heels and go up on our toes. So we're going to use this moment for a few heel raises. Good. And then we'll walk our hands back. Note that I'm trying to keep myself in a hip hinge to come back up. And let's get our 2-pound weights. So we'll continue with the hip hinge idea with the 2-pound weights. We're going to put the weights together as if you were holding a barbell, and we're going to come down with that neutral spine, and then bring the weights close to your body. Feel your hamstrings alive. Feel like you could kick gum off your shoe behind you. Feel your hamstrings waking up and come back up. And now what you'll do as you continue this, we're going to go down with the weights a little bit away from our body, and we're just checking out, if I have the weight more in my toes, do I feel my hamstrings more for my hinge up? Or if I move the weight more back into my heels, can I feel more hamstring action to come up? Because the key is you want to feel your hamstrings when you're coming up. We hip hinge over. It's a nice eccentric load on the hamstrings, and come up. So I usually teach the weight in your heels so you can feel like you're flicking your heels, turn your hamstrings on and come up. But if that doesn't work for you, you're more than welcome to explore coming a little more forward on your foot and seeing with an exhale if you can come up that way. So we're going to go into a little bit of a flow here, and we'll start with both hands doing the movement. So I'll face you for this, and then I'll turn sideways. It's a 2-part movement, but I want you to see it all. We're going to go up and down, and then over with a hinge and a row. And we come up and down and over with a hinge and a row, and I'm going to hold in my row for a moment, feel all the nice muscles on my back squeezing together, and hinge back up to the overhead press, and hold. Feel how my muscles support me here, and coming down, and row and hold, hinging up, overhead press. In that overhead press, we want to keep our ribs in our body. We want our shoulder blades to find their way to the stabilization. Doing it with a low weight really is a good idea. And coming back down in a hip hinge, row and hold that row. Coming down, finding your way back to tall, overhead press, holding there, and hinging over. Take your row. Notice that I've got my head in neutral. I'm not cranking my neck so I can see what's ahead of me. Coming back up to standing, and another overhead press. Holding that. Being able to breathe. And coming down, and row and hold. My knees can have a soft bend in them. Feeling the muscles on my back and not up into my ears. And now we're going to play with, this is so exciting to me, we're going to play with your triangle. So we'll start with my left leg being with the width side of the mat and my right leg pointing forward. And then we often get told something about squaring our hips, and I'm not going to go there with you. What I'm actually going to say to you is, in triangle, we want to hip hinge. So how about we look for, with our weights still up here, we're not going to use them yet, how about we look for where would my back foot be where I felt like I got a really good hip hinge without side bending my body. So play with your foot, and I actually find that with my foot on a bit of an angle, for me, that's a better hip hinge than if I have my foot totally squared this way. I'm not getting much, I hit some kind of a barrier, so it's this feels good, and I can feel my inner thigh stretching there. So now I'm ready to go, and we're going to actively use the weight in our bottom hand. So I'm going to put one weight down, and we're going to actively use this weight. So we're going to take that hip hinge using the bottom weight, and I'm just going to do what feels open across my collarbones, and my arm goes there, not straight up. That's where it works for me, and come back up. So now let's think about the weight. Imagine it was 50 pounds, pulling, pulling, pulling. You want to pull it up. You feel what you need to do with your legs. You almost want to draw them together and certainly push your heels into the ground and come back up. And over into triangle. And really slowly feel all the muscles that have to work. This is a whole body co-contraction of coming back up. And one more. And coming back up. And now I'm going to take the weight in my other hand, and let's just see what the difference is. So I'm going to take that same hip hinge, and then I think I'm going to, where does it work? Where I feel, remember that overhead press? We're looking for where does that work, that you feel okay, that your shoulder is steady and holding your shoulder blades in place. They're not pinching together terribly, they're really steady. No need to find a specific shape. You're just pushing your weight up and using your exhale to come back up. That was awesome. I'm going to pick up my other weight, and we're going to do a little goddess squat, and we'll do what looks like a goblet squat. So a little hip hinge, my bottom goes behind me, and I squat down and come back up. The weight stays right here, as if I'm holding onto a goblet. I want all of my foot to feel the ground, but I'm specifically pushing through my heels and my inner thighs and coming up, and my glutes. And again. Now remember, I don't want to thrust my pelvis forward. That all-important hip hinge is still here. And one more. And we'll turn our legs and go the other way. So I'm going to start finding on this side, where is my nice hip hinge? Where does it feel good for me? And once you find that, and I have found it, we'll start with the weight in the bottom hand. So we travel down. I feel a lot of engagement on the inner thigh of my front leg. And when you come back up and you're using the exhale, can you feel your side muscles? Does the weight help you feel your side muscles more? When you amp this up with a slightly heavier weight next time, you'll really notice. The weight just adds some feedback for your body. Great. Now for the challenging one. We'll go down. And I'm trying it a different way here. This is a little more challenging, keeping the weight and my arm straight, but it's always fun to play with what's going to work here. The key is that there's this sturdiness when you get to the top of your shoulder blades, knowing their place and keeping you steady. We're going to put that down because we're coming down to the floor. I'm going to get my weights ready. So let's come over and do our modified sun salutation for osteoporosis. To our knees, coming down to the floor. Rather than doing a little baby cobra, we're just going to lift, feel those back muscles, the shoulder blade muscles, and coming back down. And we're going to take the weights in our hands and we're going to put them in this, what am I thinking? Cactus pose. So we've got the weights, and if you want, you can get a pillow for your head. I'm okay like this. We're going to inhale, and on our exhale, we're pushing our pubic bone into the ground, feeling the natural curves of our spine are restored. Our tummy isn't pressing into the mat. We're protecting our low back this way. We're going to inhale again. And on our exhale, pushing our pubic bone in and our head, we're lifting our arms. If this is too much for you, go ahead and let the weights go. See if you can hold for a few more seconds. And come on down. We're going to do this 4 times. Inhaling, exhaling, pushing your pubic bone into the ground, and then lifting your arms. Breathing. Don't hold your breath. And put it back down. And another time. And put it back down. Another time. Awesome. So this becomes, I think, a little easier. We'll see what you think. We're going to bring our arms behind us. So they're right by my thighs and my palms are facing up. We're going to do the same thing, pushing our pubic bone into the mat and lifting our arms. Now you can decide if you want to float your head or not. I'm not suggesting right now that you float your feet. So pushing your pubic bone into the ground, lifting your head and a little bit of your chest if you feel it. Otherwise, just lifting those arms and reaching them long and in, not wide, but in. And coming back down. We'll do this again. Trying to keep my hands as narrow as possible. Really feeling the backs of my arms being fired up. And again, reaching as far behind me as I can. Coming back down, and I'm going to put my weights down for a moment as I get ready to use my knees and push up. Come to my side. I guess I could have just turned over, but I'm having fun this way. So we're going to come back down to the ground, the safe way always. And we've got our weights again. So with our weights this time, first thing I'm going to do is just put them right there. Now if you're using big weights, this might not be quite as easy, and you might want to do it with a disc. If you have the weight plates, it might be easier if you've got something that's going to roll around. So what I'm going to do is bridge up and come back down. So I'm not articulating my bridge. I'm just opening up the pants crease. I'm not going up high. My ribs are staying in my body. I'm keeping a hand on the weights, or even 2 hands, because I'm not going up so high that my elbows can't be on the floor and my hands still on the weight. And then I'm going to play with it. I'm going to put my feet together really close and go up. 2 and 3 and 4. And then I'm going to walk my feet wide. 1, 2, 3, 4. Walking them back into a regular below my sits bones position, and I'm going back into those cactus arms again. Palms are up. And I'm going to try to keep my spine in neutral so the backs of my ribs stay down. That's probably the most plausible place for a cheat to happen. We also don't want to tuck our tail. So I'm trying to use my exhale and lift my arms. It's a little easier to stabilize than you think. The ribs do want to lift, so you just have to be careful about that. And then you'll come back down. So now you know what it feels like, and you can decide if you want to lift it higher or keep it where it was. I'm going to go a smidge higher and see how that feels today. Don't want my shoulders to creep into my ears. And coming back down. I'll go one smidge higher. You feel different things at different heights. And then I'll come all the way down, and one last time, nice and low. Moving my arms, just finding that place where I get the best engagement. Then I'm going to let them sort of fall off my fingers, and we're just going to hold our arms up in the air. Feel what you feel. Notice what you feel. Do they float, or do they actually feel heavy and a little shaky? And then let them come down by your side. Allow the imaginary seam of a t-shirt on the back of each arm. Relax into the floor so your collarbone is nice and open and your palms are up. And let's walk our knees together and our feet apart. And relax at the hip crease and the shoulders and the face and the feet. And then slowly see about walking one foot at a time to long legs. If this doesn't tug on your back, that's great. If it does, put something underneath your knees, prop them up. And I invite you to stay here for maybe 10 minutes if you can find that time.